All right, my man. We are live. I believe we're live.
Maybe we're live. I
I
believe
think
our
we're live.
guest is in the waiting room. Can you see her?
I cannot. I cannot. No sweat though. If you can get that figured out, there should be an invite link up there. I don't see a waiting. There she is. There she is. All right. Well, we're gonna leave her paused here for just a
We're gonna
minute.
leave her in the waiting room, so to
Yeah,
speak.
yeah, yeah. So, hey guys, welcome. My name is Jeff Kaufman, joined by my partner and colleague over at Sub2 Empire, Mr. Ken Rossix. Want to welcome you to the Creative Real Estate Investor Mastery Podcast. That's a tongue twister.
It is.
All right. Well, I don't know. Is there anything we want to cover before we bring our guest on? Maybe a
Well,
little. How about a little introduction? A little bit of background for our guest.
for our guest, absolutely. And
Yeah.
and by the way, she is super great. Like I have a lot of respect for our guest today. So by all means, take it away an intro, and then
Yeah.
we'll get to it.
Well, just for transparency and just to be out in the open about it, our guest is actually she's a member of the Creative Finance Academy. Um, I've known her for quite a long time. Probably I don't know, gosh, since I got started, maybe just a couple of years after I got started, and she quickly garnered a lot of my attention because she is just a what she does is magnificent. She does what 90% of all other folks just simply don't do. They don't do it in their business. And one of the big things that I really love about Laura is the fact that I call her the, I don't know if you call her this, Ken, but I've called this to her face. She is the follow up queen. Like she is just, we'll be on a call one day and all of a sudden she'll say, "Hey, you remember that deal from I don't know 2 years ago when such and such a dress?" I'm like, "No, I have no idea what you're talking about." But yeah, she's just an awesome follow up person, and quite honestly, if I'm really being honest about it, there can be some, how do I want to say this nicely, some folks with not such good intentions. We're in a business that has it can be somewhat low barrier to entry, I say, and so sometimes you kind of deal with people that they're maybe they've never owned a business, or maybe they're just you know maybe they're just not good people. I don't know, but I will tell you, um, Laura is not one of those folks. I mean, I love doing business with Laura. In fact, we just did a deal with Laura here. What when was that? I guess when did
Was
it close? It closed last month. Or
closed
no,
it in May last May.
in May. May. Wow, I'm
Yeah,
way off.
yeah.
Yeah. So hey guys, welcome Laura Lenington, my one of my favorite real estate investors in
Pause.
all of.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I forgot we have sounds too. I meant to.
Oh yes, we can. But remember, we're still figuring out all the technical things with this, so
Right.
everybody knows that.
Yeah. So welcome, Laura. Oh, we can't hear you, Laura. I'm not sure. We
We can
can't
see
hear you.
you now. Yes, we can see you. Camera is on. Um, it doesn't look like your sound. I don't see your sound bar on this side.
You know what? Hmm. That is peculiar, Laura. We might have a little bit of a technical difficulty here.
Oh, there's always a technical glitch,
There
isn't
sure
there?
is. I'm not sure why that's doing that. Yeah, the
Yeah,
sound is not quite working. Okay. Well, we're gonna have to, Laura. We're gonna have to boot you off of here and re-invite you.
yeah.
Okay.
Let's see.
Okay.
We'll
Okay.
send you another link real quick, Laura, and just use that one and see if it makes a difference.
All right.
I'm gonna
That's
send
so
that to you.
wild. It doesn't give her. All right. Well, while we're getting that figured out, I want to first of all go ahead and announce this. If you folks are on our email list, or you would have gotten an email we just, we tout using trust like crazy. I mean, we're nuts about using trust in real estate. Just a fantastic tool, and really one of the, we just get so many questions about trust. I mean, it's just like, it seems like it's a very confusing thing for people to really grasp and understand. There we go. She's got a volume now.
Now we've got sound too and everything. Let's see here.
Okay.
There we go. There we go.
Hey.
Awesome.
Okay.
That
Cool.
was
I did a
odd.
couple things. Yeah. I first of all, I verified my email address, which I didn't see that email. And then I clicked a button that I thought I clicked the first time, but it said to allow the microphone. So maybe I misclicked. So
Awesome.
here
Good
I
deal.
am. Luckily that only took a few seconds because I know that stuff stinks when that happens. But
Well,
glad to
welcome.
be here.
Welcome. Yeah. I do want to continue kind of when you were away. I was talking to people about the fact that we use trust in probably 90% of our deals. So a lot of the questions that we get about trust, we have an answer for that now. We just put together a package. Ken, is it actually live right now?
The trust package, I don't believe it's live quite yet, but it will be by early next week.
Okay, so look for an announcement. We're going to be sending out an email for everyone that's a subscriber, and essentially we just put together an entire course on trust, and I mean it's from A to Z. It's like it's courtesy of Mr. Ken Rossix. I had really very little to do with it.
It's the essential land trust too. Yes, it'll get you in there. And you mentioned earlier too, but before Laura came on, that people find trust rather daunting. So hopefully we're gonna try to take that away, right? Take that obstacle and that barrier away.
Yep.
And go through the documents. So once you understand it, you can use it and implement it better. So all that said.
And now someone who does understand, Laura Lenington. Laura Lenington, welcome.
Yes. Hey, thank you. And I appreciate the invite. I appreciate the intro. Jeff, that was, you probably oversold me, but I know what the subject of this podcast is, and I can't wait to talk about long-term follow-ups.
I really didn't oversell it. I genuinely feel like that. You're just, you're a pleasure to work with. I really do enjoy working with you.
And for those
same to both of you.
Well, for those who don't know Laura, like I've only known Laura for the last few years, kind of through Sub2Fire and Jeff, but she is a very impressive real estate investor. So we thought it was time to get her on here and do those things. And for those of you that know me personally, like I just don't give praise out to people, but Laura is at the top of my list as it relates to respect and how she operates her business. Talk about integrity, like Sub2Fire integrity. That's Laura as well. So with all that said, Laura, we're just going to have a conversation here and ask some questions. So the first one is, tell us about yourself. Tell everybody about yourself and what you did prior to real estate.
Okay. Yeah, I'd be happy to. So, for those who may not know, we're kind of in the St. Louis area here, Jeff, Ken, and myself. So I am from this area. In St. Louis, we have what we call the Illinois side of the river, and that's where I was born and raised. So not far away at all. And that's where I live now, even different town. But I grew up in a small town that was basically, the entire town was supported by an oil refinery. So I'm from Roxana, Illinois. When I was 18 and I jumped into adulthood, I jumped straight in, both feet, joined the military. And that's how I got my start in life, was being in the military. After that, I did about 4 years in the military, active duty. Got a lot of interesting experience that I didn't know I would get at the time. So I did do a combat deployment to Iraq and some other deployments and trainings. Came back, quite, I guess, experienced and wanted to go ahead and use those veteran benefits to go to college. So I came back to the state of Illinois to get my full range of benefits. So that's what brought me back here. Got a couple degrees in business and continued to work for the Department of Defense. First for the Department of the Army and then for the Defense Contract Management Agency. And I say all of that because that's all that life took me up to where I jumped into real estate. That's what I did as an adult before starting real estate. So that's kind of like my background.
Where does that leap? When does that leap happen? How did you get?
Yeah.
What piqued your interest in real estate? What was did you have a goal in mind, like in the beginning, or? were you just looking for something to do? Like what was going on?
Well, so what my mindset at the time and kind of like what I was going through in life was that I was just in this really weird place of I was looking for more excitement, but not too much more excitement. So being someone who was in the military, it's a ton of excitement, whether good or bad feeling. There's a lot going on. And then I became a civilian employee for the federal government, which can feel often like slow and bureaucratic. And that just felt like too slow and too
Yeah.
still. And so when I was with Defense Contract Management Agency, I took a tour in Afghanistan in 2012 to 2013 for 9 months because I wanted to kind of get my boots on the ground again and really do
You need
things.
a dopamine fix. That's what you needed. You
Oh,
needed like,
I think a lot of entrepreneurs are like me, so I have no shame in saying I'm addicted to dopamine and
yeah,
all those good feeling
that's awesome.
things. And it's,
Yeah.
I'm a very successful ADHD person. And, but in any case, so yeah, I like to just be moving more. So took that deployment as a civilian, which was, I didn't get rich off of it because I was still a government employee, but I made substantial money on that deployment. But I worked literally every single day for 9 months. And every day was a 12-hour day, except Sundays, which was an 8-hour day. And I had not one period of time off except for 4 hours one Sunday when I had a migraine. I just said, I'm taking sick leave. So between dodging bullets and keeping up that schedule, I was just like, okay, well, and it was very fulfilling. Like, I'm sort of complaining, but I'm not trying to really complain. It was super fulfilling, like the work, like being kind of like toe to toe and solving problems like on the fly rather than solving problems 6 months after they occurred, like I did stateside. It was really fulfilling. So I came back and I got back to my like regular sort of desk bureaucratic schedule. And I just started going crazy in the opposite way, right? I'm just like, okay, I don't want to be sleep deprived and sitting in a bunker 3 nights a week. And I don't, and I, and I want to have a day off here and there, but I don't want to like kind of just sit
Yeah.
here still all day long typing on a keyboard. I'm like, what in the heck? There's got to be something in the middle. And
So those
because
are
I had
pretty
made,
extreme. Those are pretty
they are,
extreme opposites. Yeah.
and
Wow.
so I had made decent money on that employment, just decent for me, like, wasn't living paycheck to paycheck and had some stuff saved up. And I was just like, I'd always thought about, I'd always like had an interest in real estate, but I was never serious about educating myself on what a real investor does. I watched the shows on cable, totally thought that they're probably doctored, but also thought even if I did half of what they're doing, I'd be happy. So kind of like wanted to just start rehabbing. So I went ahead and I jumped into real estate. And I left my government job, which was just more of like a sanity thing. And I got into it, and I've been on the ride for about 10 years ever since that time. So that's where I was, and that was my mindset. I wanted something where I could be home or I could travel. I could be very, very busy, but I could also take my foot off the gas if I wanted to for a weekend. And that's what I thought real estate would give me, plus income.
That's funny. I think your foot is always on the gas. Like every time I talk to you, you've got something else going on. It's wild. Like traveling all over the
Usually,
world and doing hiking all over the world. It's
that's
awesome.
right.
Yeah.
3 or 4 things going on at once. That's right.
Yeah.
Usually.
Yeah.
You guys are really kind. I definitely do use the flexibility of working for myself,
Oh
and
yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
half
that's
the.
it's,
I know that's
yeah,
just half the battle right there. It's funny. I'm speaking at the Gateway to Freedom there in October.
yeah,
Did it last
yeah,
year. It was a lot of fun. I'm going to do it this year.
yeah.
But this year, they threatened me with letting me pick my own walk, music to walk up on.
Oh,
The onstage
yeah.
music. Yeah.
And I was like, man, this has got to be good. And then I was driving home from that, and a song came on the radio that I don't even like this band. I really have no, um, I just don't like the band very much. But the song is "Hail to the King,"
Huh.
and I thought, well, that's pretty vain. That would be pretty vain of me.
Hmm.
But then I
Hmm.
thought, and this
Hmm.
goes along the lines of what you're saying, is it's not that I think I'm a king, but I am the king of my time. And so it
Mm.
kind of just goes along with what you're saying. It's like it is so nice to be able to just pick and choose the times that you want for yourself. And I mean, it's not like that all the time. In fact, we all have duties and things
Hmm.
like that. But yeah, I just thought I thought that would be a great one,
It
but then again, go ahead.
I was going to say, I know what you would do with that. You would play that song, and then you would give the audience the context for why you
Yeah,
picked it, just
for
like you
sure.
just did.
For sure.
And
Yeah.
I think that's really powerful. Yeah.
Yeah. Or they would just think I'm super, super vain,
I don't
But
think you could truly get that across because you are the opposite. But like to your point though, we often do get really busy, and we don't. There have been many, many, many. I don't know, maybe the majority of the time where I feel like I work more hours doing this than having the 9 to 5. But there's this really cool thing about like you don't necessarily have to. It's like you're doing it. I remember when I started this, I just wanted to live and die by my own decisions. I wanted to live and die by me. I wanted to make my mistakes and have my successes. I wanted to own all of it, and that sort of it goes hand in hand with owning my time. Of course, it's not always comfortable. You don't always. I didn't know what I was wishing for sometimes, but
yeah.
it's just the fact that I know that when the rubber meets the road, I get to decide for myself and I don't have to ask anybody. That's really nice.
Right. Yeah. Super powerful. I mean, I don't know. I can't see it any other way. I like you. I worked in the government field,
Mm-hmm.
worked for the
Yeah.
federal government. And I know exactly what you're talking about. Can be
Yeah.
super mundane. So yeah. Well, hey, congratulations on getting out of it. I mean, getting into your own self, you've kind of, made a name for yourself here. And I just, again, not to shower you with too much praise, but you're just an awesome person to work with.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
All right.
So next question for you, but before I do that, I would be remiss if I
Mm.
didn't say thank you for your service, and also to Jeff, who is a former Marine, by the way. So thank you both for your service. Like, we wouldn't be here, especially me. I wouldn't be here being able to do what I do as a real estate investor if it weren't for the likes of you in the military. So we appreciate that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, but that feels really odd. I never know how to answer that question when somebody tells me
I don't either.
Was it a
But you know what
statement? That's right.
yeah,
Not a question.
sometimes I've said, "Oh, it was my pleasure," but it really wasn't a pleasure.
Right. Yeah, no, I don't think it's a pleasure. That's right.
But in all seriousness, and I know this isn't about real estate, so we don't need to spend time on this. But one thing I always do like to say back to someone who didn't serve themselves is, I love that this country has an all-volunteer army. I know we have draft procedures if needed, but I'm not interested in us ever having to use those. I love the all-volunteer army concept, and that was one of the things that made me most excited about it when I joined. Was I guess it goes back to that theme of I got to pick.
Yep.
You know what I mean? It's just really cool. So Ken, I think it's equally as cool that people that don't feel like it's a fit for them don't have to do it.
Yep.
Yay, USA for that.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
So you mentioned that you've been investing in real estate for about 10 years. You said I think when you first started, you did a flip. So talk to us about your business model. What have you done in real estate? What are you doing now? How has that shifted? Like I just peppered a lot of questions at you, but talk to us about your real estate journey and what your model and your focus is now.
Okay, great. Yeah. So just to kind of give you like a couple ideas of how I started and to then skip to what I'm doing now. So right before I left my job, I did buy my first rental property. I bought a condo in Alton, Illinois, in this really adorable building, and it was from a family member. And again, I told you a few minutes ago, I didn't educate before I jumped. I jumped in without my water wings into real estate. And a lot of people do and a lot of people don't, and it's all a personal journey. But looking back, I bought my first rental at like retail value. And it's funny because once I started learning about what investors actually do and how they do, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not getting this right at all. But it's cute. I still own that condo. It is one of my it's probably, I don't have a favorite, but it could be my favorite property if I was to name favorites. That was my first thing. And I mean, just like the adrenaline rush from buying a rental, it was like something I'd always wanted to do. And I got to kind of help a family member out who needed to sell it. I wouldn't pay that much again, but I didn't get taken for a ride or anything. So then the very first project I did when I went full time is I bought a house also in Alton, Illinois, to rehab and sell. And that's where I thought, okay, things are just going to like click and go. And yeah, I have to learn as I go, but I went to war. I can do this, you know?
Mhm.
And then what I learned through that long journey. Now, 10 years ago, the market wasn't as strong as it's been the last few years. I didn't really get hurt on that flip, like financially at all, but I didn't make a ton of money. And I also stressed a lot more than I realized. I started to like get the reality of some of the obstacles investors face, namely with contractors and work getting done. And then also the ability to sell on the back end when the market is not super strong,
Mhm.
and that waiting game. And it's not like any of it was disastrous because it actually wasn't on paper, but it did not feel as easy as I thought it would. But this part of the journey is what led me to more of what I do now, which is just I don't flip at all anymore. It's kind of been coming up for me again to just try, like I'm a whole different person now. I could probably do a lot better. Um, but I decided I kind of like had like the pucker factor going on because I'm like, this is actually not what I want to do. And I just sort of kind of gave everything up and uh-oh. And at the time I was going to like a lot of local meetups and meeting people and networking, which I advise to people who are getting started. And I just remember one time I was sitting down with somebody who I considered to be successful in real estate. And by the way, I didn't know about wholesaling before I started investing and doing this
Mhm.
flip and stuff. I was hearing about wholesaling when I was at these meetups. And I just kept thinking like, oh my gosh, that is not for me. That is not for me. Like I would never do that. Well, while I was waiting on this thing to sell and I'm like trying to fill up my time with activities, I'm, networking and someone's like, why don't you just try to wholesale some stuff for income while you wait for this to sell? And I'm like, oh, I would never wholesale. Like that's not for me. And the guy looked at me like I was like a little bit off. And he's like, Laura, any smart investor would wholesale. And it just struck me totally different. Like, I don't know, wholesaling went from a four-letter word, like a bad word, to like, hey, like kind of like, hey, dummy, like in a loving way, like, hey, girl, like if you get a good deal and you don't want to buy it and hold it or buy it and rehab it, why wouldn't you sell it for some money to somebody else? So that was like the aha moment that opened my mind up to like, yeah, this is okay to do if I want to and if I can. So I started sort of getting into that world. And then I figured out I loved it. I really enjoyed it. It lent to all of my strengths that I had accumulated, like working for the government, that desk job stuff, that like attention to detail with contracts. Again, I worked for the Defense Contract Management Agency, right? So my mind was very like good at kind of like taking notes and keeping details to refer to later. And like that's my follow-up game too, right? But then when it comes time to do a deal, like communicating the details to people and getting it to closing, I'm really good at. So anyway, I started doing that and I kind of figured out like, okay, I guess actually this is cool and fun. So I've done that a whole lot. And then that brings me to today where I'm just kind of all over the place. So I do own an apartment building with a multifamily partner I have in the business named Josh Wiesler. He's one of the people putting on the event. We own an 11 unit apartment building. I've bought and sold like long term holds over the years. I think right now my total count is 14 or 15 doors. It was up to 19 earlier this year with you guys. So yeah, my door count kind of fluctuates, but I do want that to expand and expand and expand. And you know what? If a deal comes across my desk, that's a great JV or a wholesale, I do it. And when I'm not busy doing that, I'm loving this creative stuff, which we can get into more, but kind of like focused on growing the portfolio for the passive income or passive-ish income.
Right. Isn't it funny? I think I talked about this maybe even on the last the last podcast we did, but isn't it funny the things that you look back if you look back in the beginnings of this of your venture into this into real estate, it's funny the things that they seem so obvious, like they seem so in your face, and but there's like this resistance to do them for some reason. It's almost I kind of liken it to the only way that I could really explain it or try and to put kind of uh, a definition to it is that it almost feels embarrassing, and I think it's because you don't really know what you don't know, and so you're
Mm.
afraid to venture into that. And I don't know, that was it, at least it was for me. But yeah, I wouldn't know you probably. In fact, we met one time in a house in Ferguson. That's the first time I ever met you. And I knew at that point, I was like, man, this girl is a bulldog. Like she is just, because we were all walking around the property, and, it was a couple of different wholesalers. I was doing some wholesaling at the time. And you weren't leaving. You were not leaving that table. You posted at that. Yeah, you posted at that kitchen table, and you were not leaving. And I thought, oh man, I think I'm in trouble here. Little healthy competition, right?
Oh, that's funny. That's so funny. Yeah. And I think my mind, I do remember that house and everything. And I remember there being, I don't know, my memory says like a plethora of people were walking through. I was honestly probably there longer than you were. And I know you're giving me credit for but I think what I was like, I don't have a prayer against these people, against these other investors, unless I build a relationship.
Yeah.
Because I still struggle with confidence, but I really struggled with confidence back then. And I thought, I don't know what I'm doing, but the best shot I will have is if they like me, and then I'll do my very best. But I was like, I just looked at like you. I think also Sean Greaves walked the house that day. And I just kind of, you guys were on my radar, and I was like, yeah, these guys know what they're doing. They do this all the time. And it's just, I don't know. Maybe it seemed like I did it all the time, but I didn't feel, and I just thought, well, stay here and make sure goes back to like, this is one of the strategies I carry with me to this day, even though I'm a little bit more refined. Always do the job number one is to make a friend. And I mean that like sincerely, like make a friend with the people you're dealing with. Because look, like I don't want to like do deals with people when it doesn't feel fun and good. So like it's as much for me as it is for them. And it's an authentic thing, and it really helps with the follow up, because if you get to the point where you're at a no with somebody, I'm going to follow up with them, because I've made way too much money on my follow ups to not do that. And when I follow up, I want them to regard me as much of a friend as possible, so that conversation goes as easily as possible. So yeah.
Well, I don't want to take this in I have a next question lined up for you, but I think probably I don't want to get too far off of where we originally intended, but I do want to dive into that follow up thing, because I mean, I still don't know anybody else that does follow up, at least the way that you do it. A lot of people will automate their follow up. They have these CRMs that do all of this heavy lifting, but correct me if I'm wrong, you still use the telephone. You just pick up the telephone.
Yeah.
So can you?
Yeah, call and text. Yeah.
So would you say? I guess this kind of does maybe line up a little bit with this next question that I had was, what is your best source for leads? And I don't fully expect everyone to come on here and just start handing out where they're getting their leads, but I feel like for you, once you have a lead, wherever it comes from, that lead is going to stay with you for a very long time.
Yeah. So yes, yeah. And I'll say it, I've said it to many people, and I've said it to his face, but who taught me that was David Dodge.
Yeah.
David Dodge, Mike Slane too. I mean, but they just taught me how to, they showed through their example, and I did some acquisitions for them at some point too, and saw their system. It's not like I copied their system, but I copied their intention with their system. Like David would tell me, he's like, every lead goes I use into Podio, and it doesn't get marked dead until they sell the house, or like they adamantly tell you to stop calling, like, which doesn't really typically happen to me, but it just like really set in my mind that, okay, just keep this data. And that's really just a habit I formed when I was sort of working with them. And then of course I was doing my own thing too. It was a habit I formed. But what happened, Jeff, was here, I'm 10 years down the line. A lot of people listening may have not started or just barely started. And I'm telling you all, if you actually do long-term follow-up, you build a pipeline, it will pay you in the future. And I saw that, start seeing that after year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4 and 5. I'm like, this is gold. Like I would hardly talk to anybody without putting it in Podio these days, even if it's only a couple of sentences, because I know that if I need a deal and I don't know where it's going to come from, I can open Podio and look at my mile-long list of red follow-up tasks that are overdue because I don't stay as up to, I'm being like transparent. Like I'm not a robot, but when it's time to go start checking in with people, I have the data. And I know when I talk to them, I know the gist of what we talked about, and I know the address. And I know that time can charge motivation, and I just check in with my friend. So
Yeah.
that's my way.
I think time is probably, if you really think about it, it's probably the number one motivation. It's just people just need time to marinate in what's going on. And, we're ultimately people like me and Ken and a lot of your other buyers. We're the benefactors of that. Like we, you bring us. In fact, I think you just sent us. I know you just sent us. I'm not.
Oh yeah.
It just sent us another thing, and I'm like,
Oh,
man, this has been going
yeah.
on. We personally have been involved in this for almost 2 years, and so I just love that thing. So I love that whole process you go through. So
can I ask a
Yeah.
follow-up question on that? Because I'm just curious. So you mentioned you go over the period of years. So just to put that in context for everybody, Jeff and I are up walking a couple of houses from one of Laura's lead, and I believe up in Florissant, and I believe you said that this was like a 3-year follow-up that you had with this particular gentleman. How many? I'm just curious because most people would give up. Like you just mentioned, I don't. If I'm being honest, I'm not even sure I'd follow up 3 years later or 4 years later or 5 years later. But you're saying it pays dividends. Can you put that in? You probably, not off the top of your head, not to put you on the spot, but how many in year 3 or in year 2 and year 3 and year 4 and year 5, like how many deals do you get? Like how many of those cold leads can you turn warm? I mean, obviously it's probably based on how many you contact and all of that, but how many of those really dead cold leads have you turned hot and made a deal from 2, 3, 4, 5 years later?
Well, I don't know, but I can speak to that a little bit. Like I'm my own bottleneck in my business, like 100%. I get that's sort of my situation. So whatever I do, I know that it's possible to do way better. Um, okay. So like how many I'd say for like, let's say I've got like 50 kind of like old leads, 6 months to 6 years old, whatever. I don't know how many are 6 years old, but I mean, if out of 50 of those, I'd say there's got to be 2 deals in there. If I go, so I remember, okay, so like and I know I'm just like not being very clear here, but like here's an example of sort of like how this can work for me. Cause like I remember doing this a few months ago. I think it was February or March. And I don't know, I was having one of those days. I was like, I got nothing going on. I've got to get serious. Probably the weather was nice that day after the winter. And I was just like, I'm stuck. I remember my boyfriend and I went to the grocery store and he went in to just grab something quick. And I remember sitting in the car and just even going through my Google Voice texts, just texts from the last 6 to 8 months. And I sent maybe 10 or 12 texts out, just following up at the grocery store parking lot. And I was like, I bet you I got a deal in there. And I did. I can't remember which one it was, but I just remember like, yes. So it's not really about like, I'm not saying like I'm super polished. I'm just saying I have the data, whether it's in Google Voice or in Podio. And it's just like the reaching out, the TTP, the talk to people, ask the questions. It's really that simple. And if you have a list to go off of and you're not starting from scratch every time you're starting marketing, then you're already like 2 or 3 steps ahead of yourself. So if every time I needed a deal, I bought a direct mail campaign, I mean, that's cool and it works. It can work, but I'm starting from scratch on those lists. But when I'm actually following up on these pretty cold/warm leads, people that I've at least talked to where I can write in a text, hey, last time we spoke, you told me this. Has anything changed? It's just a whole different ball game, and it's just that simple.
yeah,
So it's really as much as I want to get out of it. But I'm not saying like every follow-up is gold, but I'd say out of 50, there's definitely one in there. No doubt about it.
awesome.
Yes. Yeah,
So
that's quite a follow-up. That's for sure. I can say. So
yeah.
what is you're talking about the follow-up system? You said that you're not polished and you could be better and all that stuff too, but it sounds like you're pretty advanced compared to, well, me or anybody else probably.
You're saying advanced. I would say stubborn. you
What
you
is
know what I'm
what
saying?
is your follow-up system? What do you try to stick with? Is there set like every 6 months you mentioned, or have they talked to us about what you try to do with your leads in Podio and from a
Yeah.
follow-up perspective?
Yeah. So I keep everything in Podio. I mean, I have the nearly free version of it. It's not fancy. I don't do a lot of importing templates and craziness, and I don't connect it to other things. But yeah, everything is in there from all these years, basically. And so, okay, so for any Podio users out there, which I think our numbers are dwindling, but it's still a valid thing. I know people use it. So the trick is you put, your like lead entry in there. And again, I'm not really worried about if every single data point is filled out. I fill out everything I know for sure. But here is what the absolute key is. Well, no matter what your CRM is, I think you can do this in every single one. You have got to have an existing task associated with that lead because you're not going to remember the address most of the time. You're not going to remember the address off the top of your head if this is something from 18 months ago. That's if you're remembering things in that detail, you're probably not being efficient. So, but if you can go to a task list that's associated with this information, then you can just decide like which things do I want to follow up on. And that's what I do. I just get in there and I scroll with my little finger and I'll see addresses that, oh yeah, I remember. Like that guy was motivated, that one. And sometimes I don't remember and it doesn't matter. I go in and I read. But that's my system is I use Podio and I reach out personally. I don't make a lot of phone calls. I usually reach out with a text, which is different from mass texting because I've already talked with them. I already have records of where we've already connected. So I just reach back out. Typically we've got a couple messages, so they'll remember me. And if something's up, then I get right on the phone with them. And I
Yeah.
just do that on my couch, basically.
It's funny that someone told me one time that you're talking about Podio. We have a nickname for Podio, by the way, but I'm not going to.
Oh,
I'm not going
I'd
to say
love to
that.
hear it, even if it's insulting.
We call it Podio. Oh,
Oh, Podia. Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
No, but I mean, it just goes to show you, like, doesn't really matter. Someone told me this one time. Brilliant man told me that doesn't really matter what you're using. You could be using a piece of paper, a notebook, as
Mm-hmm.
long as it's something that you will use repeatedly over and over and over again, that you know that you will use. It sounds to me like you get into Podio probably on a daily basis just to see
I
see
do.
what tasks you have. So yeah, awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, for that
Okay,
matter, I keep all of my rental tasks. I keep like my building, like I have daily tasks of anything to do with my building or my other rentals or monthly tasks or weekly. I mean, all of that's in Podio. To keep focused, I have a separate small, I wish I had it right here, I'd show it, but I have a separate small whiteboard to help keep me super focused so that I don't get distracted with old stuff and forget to do today pertinent things. So
Right,
once I get my today pertinent things done, then it's just like kind of like a free for all in there. I just kind of chip away at that. But I
right.
agree with you, Jeff. So many people have like a notebook, and
Oh,
yes, that can work if you work it. But I also
forget it.
find things change so fast. Everyone knows how to use a computer now for the most part. If you don't, yeah, use a notebook 100%. And you'll close deals if you're diligent. But like just find something that works for you and then work it.
For sure. Yeah, I'm the worst. I have the squirreliest mind, certainly amongst the three of us here, but probably I have the squirreliest mind of probably anybody else I know. I've tried, I've tried so many different CRMs, and ultimately I just end up coming back to the same thing, which uh, for me is well, right now it's REI Black Book. I use REI Black Book.
Mhm.
Um, so real quick, I know we're getting up here on time a little bit. Have you got any deals that you're working on right now you'd like to talk about, or is there anything you can? Is there anything going on in your world right now that you're working on that deal wise that maybe you could fill us in on?
yep. And
Hmm.
where you got the lead and how that transpired from your list. Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, I'm sort of working on one. It's taking an interesting turn as of the last couple of days, but I will talk about it because I love the way I got the lead. And it's just So classic. So I was advertising some other deal. And honestly, I don't know if it was a wholesale deal or like one of mine or something, or, I put stuff on Craigslist. If I'm ever trying to sell anything, you guys, it's on Craigslist as one of the places I put it because there's actually a decent like response that you can get. I've sold many deals, especially wholesale deals on Craigslist. So funny enough, I still do that. And I had something out on Craigslist. And of course we get a lot of, well, number one, you scammers, which I can see them a mile away, but I get a lot of wholesalers that find that stuff and they're oftentimes new and that's fine. It doesn't matter to me. So this guy asked me if seller financing is available and it's not available on this particular deal. So I said, no, I really wish it was. It's just not, but I know all about that stuff. And in fact, if you know of anything that's available, I would like to know about it. So we jump on those. He's like, well, let's talk on the phone. So, I didn't know who this person was. So I got on the phone. It was clear it was like a newer wholesaler, hasn't done a deal yet. But I could just tell he was like kind of a hard charger and stuff like that. The guy within 24 hours brought me a seller finance deal for a duplex in University City. Um, and I'm still working that lead. Now we're running into a couple things with some squatters and stuff like that. And I don't know if this will materialize, but I was able to put an offer in on this that was not shut down within a couple of days of sort of randomly meeting somebody on Craigslist. And I guess the moral of that story is like, nothing's ever really a waste of time if you don't let it be. It's like I could have just heard that this guy was green. I could have seen that number one, he wasn't the end buyer. Number two, what he wants, I'm not offering. But what I made sure to do with that phone call was to tell him what I was looking for. And just by happenstance, he's brought me something. So anyway, Jeff, I know you know which property this is, and this is by a property that you own. And, I don't know, guys, if this will come together, but I would love to maybe even do this deal with the two of you as we've discussed. But yeah, it's sort of an exciting one. There's some hiccups now as far as does it need more work than we were led to believe and all of that. That can all get figured out whenever we walk the property at the end of the month. So that's
well,
one.
I can tell you for sure that now this is going to go back to just what we were talking about previously. You were, from what I understand on that deal, if I can remember, if it's the same one, if I can remember it correctly, that guy accepted another offer initially.
He did. Right? Yes. Thank you for bringing. Yes.
And so sure what happened, Laura?
I was told to kick rocks. Nicely told to kick rocks. Yeah.
Yeah. But the follow up is golden. You actually might get this done. So that's awesome.
Yeah. I followed up on that one sitting in the airport coming home from Italy because I kind of get like this. I kind of like go do some fun stuff or like take it easy for a while. And then I'll be sitting somewhere quietly and then dread of, like we all have these shadow sides of ourselves. Like, crap, I need to get momentum in my business. Again, I'm my own bottleneck. So I remember waiting for the plane and I was like, well, I really wish that deal would have worked out. And if I wasn't in Italy, maybe I could have stayed on it. And I was like, Laura, what are you saying? Like I talk to myself a lot. I'm like, shut up and email the guy. Things don't close all the time. Yep. So anyway, back on the table. Yeah. Awesome. And it's just, I'm telling you, don't count any lead out until it's sold.
Yep. Till it closes. That's right.
Totally guilty. Totally guilty. Like there's been many, many times. It's funny. There'll be some times that will happen to me. I'll just get told to go pound sand and, I'll just drop it. Next thing I know, I see that deal out somewhere. Somebody's advertising that deal. I'm like, what an idiot. Why did I do that?
And do you see it where they're advertising it at your price or better?
Oh, yeah.
Your offer or better? Like if you just would have stuck with it, they would have come to their senses. Yeah. I've seen, it's happened to me 100 times. I'm no perfectionist at any of this, but yeah, that's fun.
That's wild.
Laura, I want to, you mentioned the creative stuff that you use. So this was a seller financing deal. So Jeff mentioned at the beginning that you're actually in our group, in our Creative Finance Academy and all that. So so I'm just curious here to just piggyback, go off the script a little bit. How has the adding in the creative strategies, the seller financing, the subject to all that, how has that helped your business, or where is your business now from before you started doing it?
Yeah. Ooh, great question. Okay. Well, I love it. Okay, so there's just so many things about it that I really like doing. So I shied away from it for so long because I didn't understand it, which good. I mean, like nobody that when people don't understand, they shouldn't really be doing it yet. But I guess I never like was just not. It just seemed too complicated and over my head and blah blah blah. But then, I came to my senses. So we ended up being able, Josh and I were able to buy our 11 unit apartment building subject to existing financing. And because I wasn't yet a member of the program or anything, but I had a really good relationship with Jeff. And, we worked something out that was just very kind on his end. I was, willing, but I was just like, I know Jeff and he will make sure I do not hang myself here on this. And I had a clue as to what I was doing, but I guess what I'm getting at is like it's so exciting to do the creative deals for a couple of reasons for me. So number one, like I have a lot of confidence even when I don't feel like I know what I'm doing because I'm a part of this program and you guys are available to me to coach me and mentor me along with some other very smart people in the group. So that's just like a very good feeling. That like no matter what obstacle comes up, I'm going to have really good advice that to help carry me through how to get that figured out. Number two, the lack of my own funds that I bring to these deals makes me absolutely giddy, just giddy. I just love taking ownership of real estate when I put little to no money down. When I say little, Josh and I put down $500 to get closed on that apartment building.
That's
Now we
amazing.
borrowed some private money and we did the subject to, and there was things to do and all of that. But just getting ownership of an entire apartment building for that kind of cash out of my own pocket just lights me up to this day to think about how we were able to do that. And it's just not an uncommon feat in this world of creative, solutions. Everybody got to win. Our private money lender won, the seller won, we won. It was just beautiful. And of course, I've been able to do that on some other deals as well. And so that's also very exciting. And the last thing I'll say about like why I love doing creative strategies is I get to solve problems for people that an investor without these strategies just can't solve, whether they want to or not. And I just think that's amazing.
Yeah, it's
I'm
the
like,
best part of the day. Like
yeah,
that to me is just
yeah.
it's like I don't know. I kind of I think maybe you have a touch of this too, but where I just get like this whole creative mindset. Like I just get the juices get flowing. I'm like, how can I make this happen? And then,
Mhm.
next thing you know, you're buying an 11 unit apartment complex for 500 and you're putting 500
$500
bucks
out
out.
of
I
pocket.
mean, that's nuts. That's
Yeah,
nuts.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Have you been
Yeah.
paid yet, by the way? Have you been paid at closing for taking something subject? I don't think you have.
No, I haven't. I have
Okay.
never gotten a check when I bought.
It's
I
coming.
don't think.
It's
Yeah.
coming.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's coming.
I
I see it in
believe
your
it.
future.
I totally believe that that's possible. Like, yeah, yeah. And I would happily take it, but I'm just happy when I'm bringing nothing or 500 or 250 or
Yeah.
or whatever that is. Yeah. So it's it's a lot of fun. And like if, whenever we get in these sort of leads and deals where there are so many moving pieces and we have to get so creative, we're just bringing something to the table that is so unique. And we're just really providing this awesome service to the sellers. Like, I don't know. I guess a lot of people can look at it sometimes as predatory. They think of like a subject to type of deal. If they don't truly understand it, they may think it's too risky. Nobody should enter into that or whatever. But I see who we help. And I see when I'm working these leads how few options they truly have. And it's really exciting because I also know my integrity level and I know my performance and what I'm going to do and my partners and how we're going to handle this. And to like just bring that solution to other people is just a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one of the cool things about the creative stuff, particularly subject to is you have to be transparent. It doesn't
Mm.
that type of deal just drives integrity. You have to have integrity with it. And yeah, there's some deals out there that aren't maybe don't fly in that kind of that face of things. But for me, it's like I get to be I don't have to hold anything back. It's just freeing, and I just
Mm.
get to be who I am, and just be truthful and honest and all that good stuff.
Yeah,
I
and
think
the
we got to.
people that the offers work for, they, like I said, like they're just, it's not your fault, it's not my fault. They're just in a situation where it really works for them. You know, they
Yeah,
just don't have a lot of other options for whatever reason, or you know, they've got X, Y, or Z happening in their life, and it's just, it truly is a service. It's not just an opportunity for us; it's an opportunity for them.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Mr. Ken, you got
We are,
anything else?
sorry, I digress. I went off script there for a
He
second.
was he was he was in dreamland thinking about his next
I
subject.
was no, I was just thinking about that. That's so true. Like that's one of the things and before, right, a little bit when I worked for the man, right, not necessarily for the government. Well, I guess it was government, right, human
Yeah.
resources
Uh-huh.
for school
Yeah.
districts. When I worked for the man too, I would always take pride in that and say, okay, we have to solve this employment problem. Like, how are we going to do that? And it just like translates over into real estate too about solving problems and making it, it's not necessarily always win-win-win, but that's what we attempt to do. So yeah, I was actually thinking about that. It's like, yeah, that's exactly why I do real estate, is to solve these problems, is because people get in some bad shit, let's just be honest. And like
Hmm.
I figure like, okay, you're in a bad situation, how can I help you out of that, right? And what
Hmm.
does that look like? And I know, Laura, you're like sometimes you don't even expect anything in return. Like, you know, we've been on the other side of that too. And so talk about integrity.
Hmm.
That's exactly the definition of integrity, right? Do the right thing even when no one's watching. So
Yep.
that's it's very
Yeah.
impressive characteristic to have. But we are running short on time, so why don't we close with, like, you had kind of mentioned this a little bit before, but what's one piece of advice you would give to a new real estate investor, or maybe even an investor that wants to take their business to the next level? What's one piece of advice you would give them?
Okay, I'm excited to answer that question, and I have the exact answer for that. Real fast, I want to tell a super fast story about follow up because
Sure.
I want the audience to hear, like, people, like, I don't know, if you're just someone that's not already doing this, like, freaking do this stuff. One time I went to a house and I was there with a whole bunch of other people at the same time, and I made an offer, and and I was competing with other people, and I didn't get the offer. They had a way better offer. Da da da. I was so down about it because I just felt like that I had that deal. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It was under contract, going to close. One day I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh, it closed yesterday. And I was like, wait, how do you know? You didn't ask. I texted that guy. This is his exact response. They couldn't close. I had 4 offers. Yours was the lowest. I want to take your offer because I don't want to go through this with any of those other numbers and other people. I'm just saying I can't make this stuff up. Like people if you just stay in communication with people, stuff will come right back to you, even when it's a hard no and it just seems completely dead. It will come back to you. And I did, decent on that deal. It wasn't like some crazy deal or anything, but I actually got contact with it. My buyer on that deal was a great buyer who I've sold other deals to since, and I'm just throwing that out there. I was going to mention it earlier, but we were moving on. But as far as ad, advice to a new person, like, oh gosh, it's so simple for me. And it's not because I'm on this call with you guys, but okay, so when I got started, I did not pony up any money for coaching. I thought I could figure it all out myself, and all of this stuff. And I went down that road for years. And by the time I hired my first coach, I was just not having fun in my business. I didn't feel like my business was working the way I wanted it to. Like I was surviving, but that's what it felt like, surviving. And we hear it all the time, like get education, get a coach or whatever. That is my biggest advice to someone starting out. Even if you feel really confident, because I did too, I would still like find a way to hire someone that has what you want and who you know, or at least like and trust, and you've gotten to know them a little bit. Like really, like hire somebody to like really help you light everything on fire right out of the gate. Don't let yourself get to the point where it's not fun or you've messed something up or whatever. I mean, there's always challenges, but um, when I finally did start hiring people to coach me in the business world, everything changed for me. The first woman I ever hired, she wasn't real estate specific, but she was like a business and life coach. And I remember distinctly, and I'm not telling anybody what they should pay for any of this. There's a lot of ways to get coaching at all different price points, but I paid $4,000 for 3 months. And to me at the time, it was a really big deal. And, but I really wanted things to turn around in a big way. And so very first week, very first call, very first piece of advice she gave me was so scary, but I did it that next day. And before my second week's call with her, because of the exact advice she gave me, I made 65% of that based on the
Wow.
one thing she told me to do. But by the time I got to week 12 with her, she had paid for herself over and over and over. And to this day, I'm still using the things she taught me to do and the mindset changes she gave me. So who knows how exponential that investment has become. And now I'm with you guys on the creative stuff. I mean, I couldn't even put it into I don't even know what that return on investment is at this point because the future returns or who knows what. So I guess what I'm trying to tell people is we start out oftentimes on a budget. And we are often starting out with sort of limited thinking and limited expectations. But no matter what you want to do, find someone that's already doing it that wants to coach and figure out a way to either give them money or add tremendous value to them. And then here's the key. Do what they say. Do what they say.
Almost like a robot, almost.
Because it feels for me, it felt very scary.
Yeah, for sure.
And I still to this day will find myself maybe not executing as a mentee or a student as well as I could. But when I do, it always pays off. It always pays off. So that's my advice.
Awesome. I would also mirror that sentiment. Like same thing. I think we all kind of go through that, don't we? Like we go through this denial stage, or I like to say YouTube University, because I mean, that's the big thing today, right? Is everybody's out watching YouTube. Then they got to somehow piece all this stuff together into some sort of cohesive plan to move forward. And it just doesn't seem to work out, or they're given information that maybe isn't complete or something like that.
Right.
Yeah, I love it. I love that explanation. So real quick, I think this is our last question here. What are your plans here? 12 to 24 months out, what do you see Laura Lenington accomplishing?
Definitely owning more multifamily property, without a doubt. And I got a little plan in the works for single family creative stuff.
Okay.
That's So whether I actually buy the multifamily stuff through which, by the way, if I can buy it all creatively, subject to whatever, I'd be.
It lends itself well, right? It lends itself. Multifamily lends itself well to creative stuff.
Yeah, but we have other ways we can get that done, whether it's through banks or through syndication or things like that. But that's the main big thing on my radar. I always ask for creative, like seller financing or subject to first. So, but yeah, just basically building the portfolio and creating as much passive-ish income as possible. That's really increased for me the last few years, and I am like loving it. Just loving that whole not having to hustle for like the grocery money type of feeling, just like, okay, even whether I close wholesale deals this month or not, I know I'm getting X amount of money from my portfolio and I'm going to be able to cover blah, 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 blah. Obviously I love to travel and hike. So I've got some things on my radar, some very long distance hikes I would like to do, which would require, time and money to be able to float that. So those are like my big visions and big plans. And if anybody out there wants to sell any type of multifamily building, I would love to look at it as the end buyer. So
awesome. Kind of stole my thunder there. I was going to say, guys, reach out to Laura. Right. If you're in the St. Louis area and you're not connected with Laura in some way, I highly recommend that you do. You never disappoint. You're like always just you're just a solid individual, and I really enjoy doing business with you. So,
and I'd just like to say thanks for the kind words about the coaching and everything. But I don't want to speak for Jeff, but I can certainly say that you bring as much value to us as we probably do to you. So we appreciate that.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
That's the hope. I really do try to bring you guys value because you bring it to me, but also, when we do have the opportunity to work on deals together, I'm very picky. Oh, I am like I've before I ever bought my own creative deals, I wholesaled a few, but I would not wholesale to just someone that had the money. I would never have find a buyer for a subject to deal unless I was absolutely sure that I believed in them to execute.
Mm-hmm.
And like, so there's a very small handful of people. Now I'm like the handful. So like, hopefully it's for me or whatever. But when it's not for me, like you guys are the epitome of, you know what you're doing. And when we are in a deal together in any capacity, I just feel like a lot more relaxed. And if anything, the stress is I don't want to let you down in those situations because you guys are just like top
That's funny.
notch. You guys are freaking top notch. You know what you're doing, and I just can't express enough. Like it feels so good that like when a challenge comes up as they do, there's just always such great ideas going around between the three of us or maybe the four of us if Josh is involved, and that's priceless to me. I don't want to make a dime if it doesn't feel good. So yeah.
Love it. There's the quote of the day right there. I don't want to make a dime if it doesn't feel good.
That's
awesome.
Golden nugget right there. That's right.
All right, guys. Well, let's wrap this up. Laura, thank you very, very much for joining us today. Really, really appreciate it. Have you got any parting words here?
No, just next week, maybe just a preview of our episode coming next week. We have the Chief Operating Officer from Fund and Grow talk about some business funding and switch gears a little bit with our topics next week. So we're looking forward to that.
Absolutely. With that, Laura, thanks again. Appreciate it. Guys, we will see you all